Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Healthcare 4.0 webinar series. I would like to introduce Sanjay Bhatta, Vice President, Global Head, Enterprise Solutions. Sanjay has over 2 decades of experience applying complex engineering principles to various industries such as financial services, DoD, telecom, healthcare, and utilizing variety of technologies like AI, ML, big data, and AR, VR. Some of the highlights of his career has been developing laser electronics that use today's optical network backbones. He also has to his credit 3 patents leveraging AI ML in financial services and healthcare industry, instrumental in reducing customer churn utilizing AI ML for one of the largest telecom operators in North America. Sanjay, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you're joining us today. Today, as we discuss Healthcare 4.0, let me at least, if you will, start with a preamble to sort of speak. So when we look at the cost of healthcare, obviously they're on the rise, and artificial intelligence is gaining momentum to drive improvements across the entire patient care journey, thereby enabling positive outcomes. And this would be referenced, if you will, from the 2019 World Medical Innovation Forum on AI, which is known as the disruptive, or I should say the disruptive dozen, where AI meets clinical care. As it pertains to medical care and positive patient outcomes, EMRs, EHRs, if you will, seem to be the holy grail, to sort of speak of a vast amount of information, and obviously information which is specific to patients and the types of information associated with patients, extracting, analyzing, and achieving actionable insights. Today, I will be joined by colleagues of mine, first being Florian Quarre, who is the Chief Digital Officer at CIOX Health, as well as Prashanth Kasturi, who is the co-founder at Exponential Machines and our partner. Please welcome me as we join today's webinar. Florian and Prashanth, welcome. Prashanth, over to you.
Sanjay. Thanks, Sanjay. Again, good morning, afternoon, evening, people from wherever you are around the globe. I will start with just a quick introduction of myself and then pass it to Florian. I've been a serial entrepreneur. This is my 4th gig trying to build products and have been working around these technologies, specifically data mining, AI, for the last 14 years. And have worked in the cutting edge with partners for developing more than 7 or 8 products in this space. They've been largely in healthcare, financial services, and compliance. And I'll pass it to Florian. And before I do that, I'll also introduce CIOX briefly. So CIOX Health is a partner of ours, is a client and partner of ours, for whom we do work in basically extracting and providing AI-based solutions for their fundamental operations. I will pass it to Florian. He will introduce himself and also introduce the company briefly. Florian, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very excited to be part of this panel and sharing some of the perspective, as Sanjay was pointing out, with regards to the cost of healthcare, and how we participate in this ecosystem. So I will give a brief introduction directly of CIOX. I am the Chief Digital Officer of CIOX, and therefore, in that perspective, lead the digital transformation that requires the adoption of those new technologies. So to give a sense, a lot of us working in healthcare battle against this $3 trillion industry where about $1 trillion of it is estimated to be waste. A lot of the reasons as to why this waste exist is in part because of the way information is accessible, or actually not accessible, and requires a lot of effort to get access to it. And that's in this part of the ecosystem where CIOX operates. So CIOX is the leading US health information gateway, where we basically came from the merger of 5 companies that have been in existence for decades. So those 5 companies are IOD, Our Health, ECS, Healthport, and Care Communications. The specialty of those companies is to do what we call in the industry retrieval of information. So we do HIPAA-based or regulatory controlled access of information based on validated requesters. So when an insurance, a provider, a law firm, whomever is requesting for medical records, we validate that they are allowed by a patient to do so as per HIPAA regulations. And then we go retrieve the records wherever they are located and whichever type of records that are requested. As Sanjay was pointing out earlier, a lot of the records are in EMRs. That gives a sense of all the clinical events that support the life and the care continuum of a patient. But there's also a lot of specialty records that exist: labs, radiology or images, so on and so forth, that would require access to differentiated backend system, healthcare backend systems. Some of them are integrated with EMRs, some of those are not. And so we need to deal with that high level of variability and ambiguity. Part of our differentiated network for CIOX is that we operate the HIMs of 60% of the hospitals in the US. The HIM, the Health Information Management department, is the department responsible for the systems at a hospital. So that facilitates for us the access and the transfer of those medical records. On a yearly basis, when you think about our volume, we transit about 120 to 150 million medical records. That's about a third of the US population that transit through our pipelines. And we deliver the health information records in various type of ways. It could be straightforward. Whichever way we retrieve it from the hospital is the way we deliver it to the requester. Or it could go all the way to an executable format that would be digitized, completely digitized in a XML or JSON kind of construct, such that the requesters can then consume those medical records, those health records, and start applying their own workflow, decision-making, advanced models, and other transformation that is required by their own business. We also serve, finally, a life science ecosystem where we not only retrieve medical records to serve clinical trials or study bioinformatics, we also participate in what we call abstraction of those medical records, whereby we interpret the records based on a very specific and stringent guideline for a given study, and provide the interpretation of the record, so that when the life science organizations receive the records from us on top of the interpretation, they don't necessarily have to go through the hundreds of pages of a given medical record for a patient. They have a high quality interpretation of what the record says based on the research that they are operating or running for their own purpose. Would that be for a drug, a medical device, so on and so forth. And so that takes us back to Prashanth, into an ecosystem where, for us as CIOX, in order to operate with payers, providers, the government, pharmaceutical companies, and others at a level of scale and speed that the patients requires us to adopt advanced technologies that fluidify and accelerate the transfer of that data. And this is where, for our audience, our partners with Marlabs and Exponential Machines are going to take us through the technology aspect that supports our business imperatives.
Thanks, Florian. Thanks so much, Florian. So I think this comes back to, I think that context is very valuable, given that we're talking about medical charts in this webinar. But really, if you kind of step back a little bit, the context is, so what is 4.0 and what is healthcare 4.0? So in the context of the industrial fourth revolution of the industrialization, we took our own understanding of how the new technologies that enable the fourth revolution, combined with the different stakeholders, essentially change how healthcare has been delivered. So for large parts of uh, the 20th century, healthcare was largely focused around silos of either the payer, provider, or pharma, and the patient transferred between these three stakeholders in getting as much benefit as they could. But the fundamental shift in paradigm is that using the technologies, there is so much of interconnect or interchange of data that is possible with the right kind of insights, putting the context of the patient at the center of the problem. So, Florian, do you want to elaborate on this as far as what you think and how you understand healthcare 4.0?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The main construct as we've been operating within the industry has been a lot about the various participants, the parties that drive really all of the processes and the workflows within the industry. So when we look at us as a CIOX, as an information supplier, or some of our customers and collaborators, the farmers or the insurances or the providers or the other constituents, the ecosystems tend to be from a constituent to the patient and their families, right? So it's the insurance working with their own network of information suppliers and other technology vendors and business outsourcers and others to the delivery of something for the patient. And then in another silo, you would have the providers kind of doing some of the same. And then in another silo, you would have the government doing some of the same, so on and so forth. The shift that we're seeing happens after a lot of years, I want to say decades of transforming the operating ecosystem for the industry. And it's not something new. Putting the patient at the center has been a motto for many of us through the years. And I think we've finally reached a pivotal moment within the industry where not only do we have the right alignment from business models, do we also have the right alignment from business operations, but we also have the right alignment with supporting technologies and enabling technologies that help us do that. Eventually, what we see is by having the patient in the center and having the coordination across all the constituents, we're able to share information, consume information in ways that is unique to each and every one of us as a constituent, while sharing a larger base of information that doesn't seem to be such noisy set of data, that doesn't seem to create as much of a burden as it used to, because now we have the compute power and the ability to understand what the data means for our own unique context at the time we consume the data. And that allows us then, therefore, regardless of whether here we're a provider or farmer or payer, to, again, from this centralized set or a federated or integrated set of data, depending on the ecosystem in which we operate, to serve different and sometimes widely different use cases, right? From clinical trial to population health to precision medicine. They all sound very different, but yet are also based out of the same data set, out of the same set of information that serve different constituents for the different purposes, but yet for one same goal, it's serving the patient in a coordinated fashion. And from our perspective, that healthcare 4.0 is really where we are embracing those exponential technologies such as AI, such as IoT, big data and analytics, and others that truly help us achieve that quote unquote transformation that in itself is towards the patient's well-being.
Yes, I think just to add to that, Florian, is I think interchange of data and the ecosystem that enables exchanging of information based on the incident so that you can longitudinally support particular benefits to the patient are very, very critical in enabling 4.0. What this basically does is it puts the patient at the center with hyper-personalized care and attention, and that drives better outcomes for everybody in the ecosystem. So there are many aspects to how you could go ahead and implement a 4.0 strategy for healthcare and how basic fundamental models are changed as far as business and engagement with patients are concerned. But what we are doing in this webinar is we're going into a little more detail specifically on the richness of information available within a medical chart and how we can make medical charts intelligent and what we've done along with CIOX for enabling that. So at this point, I will pause. There's a poll question that'll come up on the screen. Would really appreciate if you can just quickly answer that. And once that is done, we'll move ahead to the next section.
Timer for the poll.
Yeah, as we wait, we'll wait 20 seconds for you to answer the poll question. And as we wait, I'm going to just move into the context of what we're doing with medical charts. That is really the central focus of what we're trying to do today. So as we, all right. Yep. All right. Thank you for your responses. And it clearly shows that everyone on this webinar is pretty well versed with what we're talking. So we will go into, we'll step into the details of what we are, what we've done with medical charts to begin with. Please understand that that's only one portion of the entire spectrum of information that we will be extracting as a part of this series. So just to understand what is available in medical charts, right? So the big piece is you have demographics of a patient, you have history of their medical incidents, all the emergencies, the different prescriptions that are available, procedures, and a lot more. So every time there is an incident and information that is appended during a discharge or during a visit, it provides a lot of information that can be extracted and longitudinally analyzed, along with a time series view of the onset of a condition, possible diagnostics that could be provided in the future, or future diagnostics based on historical evidence and stuff. So the purpose of what we were trying to do is really extract unstructured data from medical charts and present it in a structured format that could then be used for further analytics. So a lot of use cases around this are around either assisted diagnostics, population health. There's a use case that we spoke about or we've done, which fundamentally connects care management teams with patients. And we try and make digital engagement a leading indicator of the health. And that basically translates to reduced readmission rates and better outcomes for any discharges that happen from hospitals. But apart from that, across the provider, payer, pharma spectrum, the number of cases that are available for us to kind of go and dig deeper into that start getting benefited by additional rich information that comes from unstructured extraction of medical charts is for you to see, and there are many cases that exist. At this point, I also want to just go back to Florian. There are specific use cases that we've worked with, but Florian, if you can walk us through some of the challenges that you faced, as well as why it was difficult for us to extract information from medical charts, will be a good insight for the audience here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the context, as we talked about earlier, we need to serve in a ubiquitous fashion all the requests that come from our customers. Now, when you look into the back end, the hospitals, the community research ecosystems, the smaller clinics where you're going to be accessing the information, not everything, not all those systems have gone through an open API construct that uses a standard HL7 format that would provide breadth and depth of information, and absolutely far from it. The reality that we face on a daily basis is whenever we need to go get access to information, and even more so when that information needs to come out in a digitized fashion with some degree of coding, with some degree of interpretation or abstraction, and some low-level, even just low-level analytics, we're faced with having to go to potentially hundreds of sites, hundreds of hospitals or clinics. In average, hospitals operate 16 different versions of different EMRs vendors or EMR technologies. So it means that based on configuration, based on usage, right? Some departments are going to use the EMR differently than others. Based on the level of integration, the combination that we face with is astronomical, right? We don't really have a way to, or we try as much as we can to automate the connectivity to the EMRs, right? At the very least, that's one thing that we do. So from an infrastructure standpoint is trying to get access to the records in a electronic fashion as much as possible, not even talking about digital at that point. Once we are able to aggregate those records, and in about, I want to say 80% of the time, 80 to 90% of the time, we are able to get those records in electronic format. When we're not able to do that, it's semi-electronic by the means that we send people to go into the record, the system, and then extract the records and upload those records into our ecosystem. Once we're there, there's a wide variety in terms of expression of the data and in terms of breadth and depth. And so not all events, not all ways of expressing a clinical event is going to be always consistent. There is a decent amount of consistency, but again, for systems where people code things manually, well, it will depend on the coder's department's readiness or level of efficiency and performance, so on and so forth, that might actually define the way things are written. When you have nurses or you have doctors that need to capture information, health information in a more complex way because it's a surgery or it's an event that requires more details, it might actually be very specific to the person, to the doctor that actually captured the note, right? And so each and every note becomes very different. When you multiply, simply mathematically, when you multiply the number of records that we deal with, hundreds of millions of records, by the number of sites we go to, thousands of different sites, by the number of variability, 16 plus, or let's say 15 odd different kind of backend systems, plus an additional set of variability between the breadth and depth that we look at, it's just a number of permutation that is very complex and large to handle. So what we're trying to do is finding ways, working with Enso and Exponential Machines and Marlabs, to apply AI in ways where we shift upside down the conversation and start using technology to find patterns, find ways to identify where the information set actually resonate from one record to another, and start extracting and formatting and structuring that information using ambiguity and mathematical patterns and models. Prashanth?
Yep. And so just to elaborate, I think Florian used a couple of words, Enso here. So what we have at Exponential Machines is we have a platform called Enso. It's a suite of tools that come together that enable, apart from extraction, enrichment, basically decisioning, it enables a pipelining of different AI services that enable solutions to ingest unstructured data in large volumes and extract information using AI models that have been trained for healthcare, and then extract it out and output it in a format that is required for the solution. So specifically in the case of working with CIOX, we used OMOP as the specification and the standard for defining what objects or what data we want exported out of the medical chart. And we used the models, trained them to extract this information, and eventually stored that in a data store. But obviously, as you all realize, extracting from a unstructured data text is not trivial, and it causes a lot of problems when you want to deliver enterprise grade quality. So I'd like to pull in Sanjay here because there's a lot of other cleansing and other aspects of the pipeline that we added that enabled us to get enterprise quality output that could be used by downstream consumers like life sciences companies and payers. Sanjay?
Thank you, Prashanth. So when we speak about the type of specifically, it will be the characteristics of data. So as Florian had mentioned, in terms of medical records, perhaps the quality of the images associated with medical records, and in instances, there may be additional information, enrichment information, if you will, which could be clinical notes, clinical documentation. What we've observed, through our sets of experiences is being able to comprehend the overarching quality of the data, because obviously at the end of the day, the quality of the decisions that are being made are based on the quality of the data that you're actually testing that supports these types of models. They're further instantiated, if you will, and supported by this sort of a platform. Specifically, when we look at data and the characteristics, there are various concepts. So everyone is obviously familiar with the 5 V's when we look at it from a big data perspective. But what we've observed is of most interest would be imputation and the inferences associated, and due to the attributes of imputation, overarching quality. There's a variety of machine learning algorithms that we've experienced that work well given the right set of circumstances. So it's not so much that we look at AI and machine learning as a hammer and applying the hammer to every instance. Based on the types of quality and the characteristics of data, we would employ the right set of machine learning algorithms that are customized to that specific unique instance of data sets to auto-transform, auto-cleanse, if you will, translate, transform such that it's readily ingestible by a platform such as what we're seeing here today, which is very instrumental in your data pipelines and machine learning pipelines. Thank you, Prashanth. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks. And I just want to let people know who are on the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to post them. We will take them towards the end. We were hoping to be further ahead, but we've kind of gone a little more into the details of what we do. So at this point, I'll open up for another poll that'll quickly get you started. And as we go through the poll, I will pull up a demo of what we have. To set the context, what we're doing is we're demonstrating what we've done with the data that we've extracted and the pipeline or the process and the tooling, which is Enso, that we've used for performing this extraction. Now, one thing you'll have to understand is if you were to do it in a normal scenario, you'd basically go ahead and have to write a lot of code that'll enable it, right? So as we go forward and again, no surprises here with the poll. All of you have either or are in the process of planning AI as a technology initiator for extracting information. And we absolutely love it that you're here and you're able to see what we can provide as a value to all of you. So as we go in, I'm going to switch. I'm just going to pause my presentation and I'm going to switch to a demo of an extraction and also the process we've used for extraction.
So if I may, Prashanth, and thank you for going through reviewing in terms of the statistics and as we prepare for the demo, but just a very few interesting, if you will, facts as we're embarking on this value-based care, all associated, hopefully, as it pertains to the positive outcomes for patients. Some of the things that I would think that are of utmost interest is that about 85% of Americans report that they're utilizing at least one of 6 devices, and all of this is in the spirit of some form of patient monitoring, something in some way, shape, or form related to a positive outcome for patients. I think another, obviously, would be that there is a neural network that has been employed, which is providing 85% accuracy in detecting diabetes from your heart rates. And obviously, when we look at facts and statistics such as these are very encouraging as we're embarking on this journey, and as we look at the application of AI in healthcare. Just one more, if I may. Between now and I would say within the next couple of years, if we look from a 2014 to a 2021 timeline perspective, we're looking at from a 2014 perspective, a little over 663 million, if you will, applications of AI for healthcare. As we approach 2021, we're looking at going from 663 to 6,662. It's pretty much about a tenfold increase, which is very fascinating. Prashanth, back over to you. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Sanjay. Yeah, all of us, we're seeing an explosion of obviously interest and the possibilities with AI through our lifetime. But as I go through this, right, so I'm just pulling up a quick dashboard. A lot of you would have your own tools for analysis like Tableau or ClickView or any of the other Power BI. And what we've done is we've taken the extraction from a sample of medical charts. And what we also provide is a dashboard that kind of enables you to stratify, do an analysis of the different data that you've extracted. So right from allergies to basically picking up based off the medical charts, the different extracted information that you've gotten, whether it's vitals, diagnosis, and you can add other dimensions to it, including medication and stuff. And as you go through the filters, you start seeing the variance of the population across what are the top prescriptions they've received, what are the top conditions that they have. And obviously this dashboard is just indicative of the kind of stratification that you can do of data. And once you get the data extracted from a chart, you could then apply it into multiple views that make sense for your particular use case. From this is really the application of the output that you receive. I will then switch to the output of the document itself. So many of you can already recognize this is a de-identified medical chart on the left, and there's extraction of information that we are seeing on the right side, where we're looking at patient details, we're looking at different incidents, where we look at their procedures, their diagnosis, and all of this is being extracted from information that is as random as you can see on the chart. There are other examples I can run you through of different variety of charts, and you will still continue to keep getting the same extracted output, whether it is diagnosis, the different measurements that you're having in the medical chart, symptoms that you get. And as this is an AI-based solution, you will receive multiple recommendations of the data that you see in the chart. And the way we kind of enable it for practitioners to refine and improve the system is you can provide feedback. I'm going to mess this up a little bit, but I will still do it. But you can provide, any user or an agent can provide feedback. So this is then used by the system to learn from it and improve the model as you get feedback from every output that an agent provides. So this enables us to continuously learn from history, continuously learn from every new version that is provided. So even if you have a outlier, you can still continue to apply a processing team that refines and improves the model operation. And the development of this solution itself is so simple that you can basically take, all you need to do as a user is define a domain that you want to construct and you want to extract information from. In this case, we have preloaded it with healthcare, healthcare vocabulary, healthcare models, but the definitions are pretty much like any existing ER or database design that you would have, JSON schema, or any XSD schema that you would have. And the definition of each of these entities is what the platform looks for, and the models are trained on this information to essentially extract information and then further enrich it based on all the information available within the charts. So eventually, a bunch of services that are present are within the platform are available for you to pipeline. And we have a suite of pipelining tools, but the most popular one that we use is Apache and NiFi. And we use NiFi for using the services of the platform, like extract tables, extract paragraphs as an example, to orchestrate them in a pipeline that enables extraction and processing of information through AI services very easy and simple. So this kind of dumps it down really for many people, and most of our ideal teams that exist is a combination of two developers, one data science person, and a couple of other testers. So a pod of 6 people essentially end up delivering a solution for most clients. So that being said, I'm going to pause here again in the interest of time. I will just run through really quickly on the rest of the slides that we have. And as I was saying in the past, what we've done for this particular solution is the definition is based on OMOP. We are a cloud agnostic platform. We can work across both public clouds as well as on-prem deployments. We basically use containerized and virtual backend to ensure that we are cloud agnostic. We use healthcare trained models, healthcare ontologies and vocabulary for enabling quality of extraction. And eventually we use feedback from resources and agents to constantly improve the output of models and the solution itself. I will share this deck, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to run through. Enso is a combination of multiple tools that come together with Enso Core that fundamentally works on hybrid and ensembled AI models that provide output automatically or using custom models from your own stable to enable easily developing AI solutions just by pipelining different services together. So the one key part that I wanted to cover is that I think the way we do it is also very unique. And the big problem most people ask us is how long is it going to take? And the answer is very simple. It will take 2 to 3 years. And the reason for that is because we have a lot of what is it that's going to involve, and how do I know that I'm going to get ROI, right? So for that, we have a very, very simple model. It's called a 1-2-3 methodology. What we do is we do a week of advisory workshops that clearly define the ROI, that clearly define the expected savings and the time to reach break even. We then take additional 2 weeks to use the POC that was developed in the first week and apply it with your data and put it in within your environment, whether it's a hybrid cloud setup or on-prem. And in 3 months after that, we're essentially production ready. So we've kind of made it very time boxed, very simple in terms of defining ROI, and very little in terms of risk that is presented to people that want to experiment and try and use AI within their organizations. So at this time, I'll open it up for questions. I know we just have 5 minutes to go, but any questions that you may have, please feel free to type below in the section of chat, and we will take them one by one.
Thank you, Prashanth. We've already received around 18 questions. I encourage more questions. We are going through the questions as we go through. One quick question, Prashanth, for you is, what are the other use cases that you worked on with this platform? If you want to touch that.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Santosh. So obviously, healthcare and life sciences is really big. So we work on, with one of the clients, we're working with safety, basically adverse event reporting, where there's a lot of unstructured data that comes in. That is one use case that we use. We're working with one of the large payers in predictive adjudication of their claims. That's another big use case. We're working with auto coding of medical charts. So essentially, once we extract information, risk adjustment coding and diagnostic coding is what we provide. And outside of healthcare and life sciences as well, we've done work with large companies, and I mean, some of them are like Walmart, Samsung, and financial services. There are others that I may not be able to name openly, but what we've done is we've done reconciliation of invoices and contracts. So that's another common use case we're seeing so often nowadays. It enables a whole lot of automation in the ability to pay a claim, whether it is an expense, whether it's an invoice, or whether it's a medical claim.
Thank you, Prashanth. There's a very interesting question for Florian. I think one of our participants is struggling in his or her organization in terms of how do they prove value or showcase the ROI of the AI initiatives. Florian, the question is to you. How did you showcase the ROI or the value of the initiative with your execs at CIOX?
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's not always easy, and it's very context specific. But for us, we chunked it in ways where we could demonstrate value with a small production-ready prototype within about 3 months. And so the model that Prashanth talked to us about and that Xpms expressed was very relevant to us, so that we don't end up in 2 to 3 years down the road trying to demonstrate ROI. We wanted to demonstrate a return right after 3 months. And it's a small return. It's not huge, but it set the tone to start another prototype that then will be taken to production and demonstrate ROI as well. And when you start compounding a series of small events, it becomes a big transformation within the organization and justifies further investment in bringing in an entire ecosystem that becomes front and center to the digital transformation. So again, demonstrating in small increments is one thing. That's number one. Number two, I had to make sure that as part of our leadership, we had enough champions that at least gave us enough space for 6 to 9 months in terms of investment, just so that while we demonstrate those small ROI, we did have an overarching umbrella of support that ensures enough comfort and enough investment such that we can actually prove to ourselves that we can be successful before failing and effectively closing shop and saying, well, it doesn't work. Because sometimes you do hit roadblocks, you will hit roadblocks, but you need to be able to have that support to help you move forward.
Thank you, Florian. I think that was a candid feedback, and how you could actually navigate internally at every organization would be different, I'm sure. Just moving on quickly, Sanjay, this is a very, I would say, typical question from one of our attendees today. The question is, as we are in the knowledge industry, all the capabilities, all the solutions, platforms that we discuss about are resource-centric, so to say. How at Marlabs are you building the capability and nurturing the talent?
It happened to be a very challenging, not so much a question, but very challenging hand. But if I may start off, there's a common misconception with open source packages such as your scikit-learn, TensorFlow, PyTorch. And what I would caution folks is that, while these packages are great, the caution may come at the expense of using models that are maybe more for a generic purpose versus using either pre-trained models that happen to be associated specifically with a vertical such as healthcare and life sciences. That's one. Second is that there's customization and enrichment. So please don't take models at face value. It comes through the tribulations and best practices, which we here, combined entity, if you will, between Marlabs and Exponential Machines, where we've been able to, through time and time and again, demonstrate the expertise by establishing, developing, implementing, designing, validating machine learning platforms as it applies specifically to the types of challenges that we've discussed today. Again, as it relates to Healthcare 4.0. Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjay. Thank you so much. I know we are hitting the top of the scheduled time. Just one quick last question, and to make it light and nice, there is a participant who's thanking us for the session, really impressed with what team has achieved so far. This question could be for Florian or Prashanth. The participant is keen to know, how do you start? Where do you start this journey from?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, Florian, go ahead, please. Yep.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. I think on our side, it's start and try and find a problem that is in isolation, so that you don't try and solve something that is too complex, too front and center to your mission critical processes, too much embedded into your success. Try and give yourself enough space and breathing room to try and learn and demonstrate to yourself that you can succeed. And as you succeed, start and tackling more and more complex problems that will generate more and more ROI as you go.
Thank you, Florian. Prashanth, you wanted to add a comment there?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is obviously, I think connect with us. The simplest part is a very, very light engagement with a simple 1-week workshop that should enable us to help you find a sweet spot, as Florian was mentioning, that can then put you into production ready in 3 months' time. So that is what I would recommend going forward.
Thank you so much, Prashanth, Florian, Sanjay. Thank you to all the listeners, all the participants today. I hope you found the session useful. We would be circulating all your questions with answers, and also the presentation we would be sharing. The contact details are given on your screen. I would request you to kindly take the small survey at the end of this session that would pop up on your screen right after I finish. Once again, thank you so much, and looking forward to meeting you all in the next series, where we will be talking about some of the benefits apart from 4.0 and how the future of the industry is shaping up. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Thank you.